welcome to our unveiling of Athera, Foundry's new cloud platform. It's very exciting to be here in Germany, sunny Germany, in Stuttgart. Thank you very much for everybody coming in the room, and thank you very much to the people out there listening on the live stream. I'm very excited to announce the unveiling of this project. We've been working on it for a number of years, and this is the big day where we finally get to show it to the world in all its glory and actually have it out there on the website, out for you to try out. And I'm not going to talk too much because I'm going to hand over now, pretty much, to Neve from Google, who's our partner on this project, and she's going to explain a little bit more. And you've got a great story, great people talking about the platform to enjoy in the next hour or so. So without further ado, hand it over to Neve.
Awesome, thank you. I have two mics now. I'm going to put this one down. Perfect. Can we get the slides? Fantastic. Okay, guys, so I'm Neve. I'm a business manager at Google Cloud Platform, and I'm really, really excited to be here today to talk about the fantastic partnership that we have with Foundry on this, what we think is going to be a game-changing platform. So, why is Google here? Well, let's think back to 1999, when two boys sat down and decided they wanted to set up a company called Google. And the mission statement for that company was going to be to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. 2018, the mission statement still hasn't changed. We're still there and we're still trying to get it out there. Everyone in the room familiar with this box? If I say Google, all of you are going to think, nice white page, search box, you type in a bit of text, and a fantastic, magical experience, a load of information comes back and you find what you're looking for. And that's what you should think. What I see, however, is this. It's all the infrastructure that is working behind to make those magical experiences happen as seamlessly as possible. Now, 19 years ago, when Larry and Sergey sat down and decided they wanted to build a search engine, they had to take a minute and go, okay, we're going to have to make a couple of copies of the entire World Wide Web. How are we going to do that? What technology can do it? What database? What file store? At that time, there was no one commercially or no one in the open source world looking at trying to solve this problem. So they had to develop a lot of tech themselves and solve a lot of problems and really think about the infrastructure that they were going to build. Like everyone, we started small. Does anyone know what this is? No? So this is actually the PO for the first Google data center. That's pretty awesome. Signed by Larry himself. Well, initialed. But what I wanted to point out here was, at that time in 1999, Larry Page had the foresight to realize that to really make scalable solutions, the key was power. So when he initiated that PO, he asked for a higher volume of power for that data center than was currently available. Not only that, we continued to innovate and evolve our infrastructure. We've come a long, long way. I giggle when I see this slide. This is one of the first motherboards, and the solution for keeping it cool was actually propping it up on some corks. Yeah, so as you can imagine, we've come a long way from there, okay? So we've taken that learning and we've evolved. And what have we evolved to? We are now a company that is running over 7 cloud products with over 1 billion users, all down to the fact that we put infrastructure first. Now, you're in the room going, that's fine for Google, but why is that relevant to me in the room? When we strip it all back, fundamentally, Larry and Sergey were trying to solve the same problems that we all are in the room today. We need to be more data-driven. We need to stay ahead of the competition. We need to be more collaborative and productive. We need to be agile. And we need to be sure that we are working in secure environments. And that's where Google Cloud comes in. Okay? We want to use this Google innovation to solve the problems that matter to you. And we've been working with a lot of VFX companies, and I'm going to show you, because I've been told you can't do a VFX presentation without a sizzle reel, so I'm going to show you some of the work that we did in 2017. I hope you're impressed. We did with companies, obviously. Pretty cool, yeah? I like it. Okay. So, is it presenting yet? No. Sorry, apologies for the tech fail. Okay, so, yeah, that's fantastic if you're a big VFX studio and you can invest in all that infrastructure and work with Google Cloud to do that. Rendering works fantastically, but fundamentally, if you're a freelance artist, how does it relate to you? Your workstations, they're expensive, they're heavy, you don't want to be carrying them around. And the way the world economy is going and the way the industry is going, you need to also be able to work remotely, wherever you need to be at whatever time. And that's where Google Cloud's infrastructure really shines. By using Google Cloud, we do offer the same performance that you get from the infrastructure that runs YouTube and Google Search and all our other products. You need that access, that strong access. Google is one of the largest backbone networks out there, all built by fiber. We have thousands of miles of fiber running our own private network that Google Cloud users get access to. And then finally, the security, which is really, really important in this industry. We qualify for all of the ISE auditing standards, and all of your data and all of your information is safe. And it's for that reason that Foundry and Google have decided to partner on this fantastic platform. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the fantastic mastermind, Matt Mazzaroli.
Thank you. That was lovely and impressive. Google is just I love epic scale, epic storage, and it's actually really humbling to be building something like Athera, supported on the shoulders of Google's amazing network. So let's talk about Athera. First thing I'd like to do is bring a little bit of our team into the room. There's more than just myself and Mr. Pickles here who've been directly involved in helping build this thing. As you can see, we do our best work at the pub. We too are a distributed team. I work from Canada. Most of the team is in London, so we kind of live our own product in some ways. So shout out to the Atherians. So let's talk about the shift of visual effects to the cloud, because that's really what Athera is all about. It's a big trend, and cloud has been kind of on the tip of everyone's tongue for a long time. And with Athera, we've been very specific about what we want to achieve with what we've released. So Athera is all about power and flexibility, and mainly for freelancers and small studios. And we really see the cloud as the enabler. All that elasticity and scale that Neve was talking about is what powers that. Of course, everyone wants power and flexibility, whether you're big or small, but kind of the ups and downs of being a freelancer are just much more pronounced than if you're sort of one of the larger studios operating at scale, where you can kind of smooth between your peaks and troughs. So that's why we think the appeal is really strong there. Just to talk really quickly about our journey that we've been on to actually build this thing. It actually started a long time ago. We started looking at what pipeline and cloud would mean as far back as 2015, when we joined up with ILM to start a project called Forge. And Forge was basically about, it was kind of a moonshot of like, how do we just take the idea of moving a pipeline in the cloud and just dialing it to 11 and see what happens. It was kind of a really great research project that we did jointly with one of our great customers. Something Foundry actually does quite often is we love to partner closely with customers to really understand the problem space. The conclusion of Forge, we had this thing called PIC, Pipeline in the Cloud. We kind of incubated this thing as an internal labs project, and we evolved the tech. And this became something called Project Alara, which probably many of you know Athera by its name during beta, which was Alara. And 2017 was all about working really closely with beta testers, just getting as much feedback as we could to really understand what we needed to build and ship. And that takes us today, where we're going to show you what we have and show you how you can get more information about it. As well, we have some amazing folks here who are involved in the beta, have done incredible work, and have some ways kind of deeply personal stories about what this, the possibilities of working in the cloud can do. And for me, that's the most important part, is people's personal stories. So we've been in development for 3 years. We've had over 70 beta testers, 16 months of development, surveys, conversations, beers, the whole thing, to learn as much as we possibly could. A few things we kind of really picked up on is, when it really comes down to it, it's not about cloud, right? What really matters is you need to get the talent and the tools that you want to make the magic faster, flexible from anywhere, right? Cloud is just the kind of the way to do that. So that's kind of something we're really sensitive about, is always keeping our focus on the fact that people just want to work with the people they want to work when they want to work with them, with the stuff that they need to get the job done. Another thing we picked up on, interestingly, is that for a lot of folks, cloud is still an unknown. Folks are obviously concerned around cost and security and performance capability. All of those things are there's all tractable problems today with cloud, and we've worked really hard with Athera to focus on all of those things. So we'll talk a little bit about some of those aspects when we actually give you guys a demo in a minute. We also believe that indies will drive change. This has been a really interesting one as well. I think the shift to the cloud is a big movement. It's one that's going to take a long time. We just kind of believe that it's not the kind of thing where everyone's going to be following the big boys like we do sometimes in the industry. But this is kind of a case of grassroots movement, where the people who are going to pick this stuff up and do the most interesting things are going to be the freelancers and the small collectives, and they're going to create a kind of a groundswell of change, which is really inspiring, because it's given us a lot of focus of the type of people we talk to and learn from. I mean, we want to move up to larger studios over time and follow the trend, but we really think the beginning, the seed that's being planted, is with indies. So I'm done talking around Athera. We actually want to give you guys a demo, and we're going to show you some stuff. Just a couple of things to keep in mind when we're showing you this. There's 4 kind of key things that Athera does really well. Is helps you to organize your teams, lets you collaborate around centralized storage, gives you flexible access to applications, and gives you an elastic render farm. So we're going to show you all of those things right now, actually. So Simon, are you ready?
I'm ready, Matt. Yeah.
All right. So let's go. I need to tell PowerPoint to go away. All right. Can I get my video switched to the main screen? Oh, I did. Oh, sweet. Thanks. All right. So we're going to show you Athera in action, and I'm going to be helped by Simon Pickles here. So Simon's the lead engineer on Athera, and we're actually going to do this with a little bit of role-playing. So I'm actually going to the wrong website. There we go. So Simon is actually going to be my compositor on my virtual studio in the cloud, and I need Simon to help me, because I just picked up this really big, awesome project, okay, and it's kind of secret, but I need some help. And Simon, I brought him on board as my compositor, and it's mainly because Hugo Guerra wasn't available, because he was too busy doing other stuff. So I kind of had to settle for Simon a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm going to show you guys how this works. So what Athera is going to do for us is going to provide everything to execute Project Cats. And when I mean everything, I mean we're going to set up the project, we're going to connect storage, we're going to get workstations, software, rendering power, and we're going to do all of that right now on this laptop with just a web browser. All right, so here we go. So first thing I'm going to do is sign in. This is my really awesome username. All right. So one of the cornerstones of Athera is this concept of the context switcher. So Simon, before I get into that, you want to talk maybe a little bit about the security around Athera, and why, if I'm doing a project like this, Athera is actually a pretty good choice.
Sure. Well, as you know, Neve mentioned, security is always going to be paramount when it comes to any sort of cloud offering, right? So Athera is no different in that respect. We take it very seriously, and we have a number of strategies to ensure that your work and data is secure. So firstly, we have our own process of an internal security review that takes place periodically. But I think perhaps more importantly, we're actually independently audited by one of the top cybersecurity firms in the media and entertainment industry, and that's ISE. So that's really interesting. Being hosted on Google Cloud really allows us to leverage that world-class security credentials that those guys have. So that's incredibly helpful for us. So, I mean, all in all, you know, Matt you can rest assured that your data is safe with us.
All right, that's good, because these Project Cats guys, they're really demanding. So, so let's look at the context switcher. So, contexts are actually a really important concept in Athera, and it's kind of a key to making a lot of this stuff work really well. So I've got a couple of contexts here. So this particular organization called Oxygen Fox is just one I'm freelancing. I'm doing some side gigs with, and that's why I've been invited in there. But you know, I'm not the owner. But this is actually my organization, Board Pictures, and this is the one we're going to do Project Cats in. So contexts are important because they basically wrap everything up that surrounds your production or your shot. So essentially, they keep everything tidy, secure, including your team, your storage, all your quotas, your roles. And whenever I switch contexts, all of those things switch with me. So I can be working in multiple places at the same time by switching contexts, but everything is kept completely separate. So that's pretty neat. So I'm going to go and start setting up Project Cats. Okay, and Simon, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about what's going on with context here.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So yeah, when Matt is switching context like this, he's actually changing his view of the entire system. And obviously that's going to mean changing who he's collaborating with, but it also means what storage he can access, what his quotas are, what sort of permissions he has. Athera can do this by having a highly dynamic architecture. So we use some really cool web technologies, things like Docker, Kubernetes, and that allows us to deploy applications in this flexible way, including highly flexible storage configurations.
All right, so we're getting there. We have a memorable icon for Project Cats, so it's looking kind of good. I need to add Simon to this thing, so let's see, here he is. I'm going to add him to my project. Okay, that's cool. So now that I've added Simon, actually I'm a little concerned because you know, Simon could just spend all my money and waste my resources. So you know, we're going to fix that problem right now. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to set up a quota for Simon so that Simon actually doesn't cause too much trouble here. So let's see, we're going to go in, super secret Project Cats coming up, and I'm going to add a quota for Nuke because that's the thing I'm going to give him. And let's see, Simon, I don't want you working more than 8 hours a day, okay, buddy? Okay, and just for 1 week. All right, so there we go.
Part-time then? Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, you just send me a bill when we're all done. All right, great. So now that our team is set up, everything's looking good, we're going to need to connect some storage. Right. So storage in Athera actually works in kind of a interesting way. With Athera, we allow you to maintain control over your security, contents, and cost of your storage at all times. Essentially, you bring your cloud storage and you hook it in just like connecting a USB stick. So, for example, you can bring in a Dropbox account or Google Drive if you like. That works. We also support production-grade object storage, and this is the stuff that, you know, the super powerful stuff that's on Google's platform. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the magic behind how storage works in Athera. Sure,
thanks. Yeah, so in Athera we call the storage system Atlas. Atlas is basically like a cloud file server. It allows us to connect hyperscale object storage up to your Athera environment and present a NFS compatible interface, which is obviously something your applications can understand. As Matt alluded to, it can work with Google Drive, it can work with Dropbox, but you know, the better performance comes when you connect it up to more performance systems like Google Cloud Storage and even Amazon S3 as well. We're not fussy. The goal being that you retain control of your own data at all times.
All right, so that's kind of cool actually. So now we've got some storage hooked up and we've set up our project. So now let's get some software.
Right.
So software in Athera is accessed through a system we call entitlements. So entitlements come in two flavors. One flavor is what we call a compute entitlement. It works like putting gas in your car and it's used for rendering. So you can kind of fill up some number of hours and then we meter it down by the node second. The second type of entitlement is called an interactive entitlement. And an interactive entitlement grants you 30 days or 200 hours of usage of a certain software, whichever one expires first. So it's very flexible, and you can just get it on demand, and everything just gets charged by credit card straight to the payment model that I've set up for the organization. So maybe Simon, you can talk a little bit about that, and I'll kind of go through look at some of the entitlements that we have.
All right. Yeah. Sure. Thanks. So, yeah, Matt's right. But an entitlement is actually it's more than just the software. It's or perhaps the software license. As part of that entitlement, you get access to that powerful machine that's running in the cloud. It's all bundled together into a single price. And I think it's something that Neve alluded to, that one of my favorite things about Athera is the fact that you no longer need to invest in a fleet of rapidly depreciating desktops and render nodes. You can scale your hardware as your project demands, really.
Yeah, and it's really cool because obviously you get potentially a right-size powered machine for every different application without needing to, have a box that is sort of, middle of the line or over the top expensive for you. So these are the things that we have on Athera today. As you can see, we've got a lot of the awesome Foundry stuff. We've got including Katana and 3Delight, but we've also got the huge pleasure of having Houdini on Athera. Patton's going to show some really awesome Houdini stuff later, and some other really useful. We got Blender and some other really kind of useful things. We're planning on expanding this portfolio very rapidly. We're talking to many other people about taking advantage of Athera as an open platform. We really look at Athera as a place anyone can bring their applications and make them available to people, and that includes Chaos Group with V-Ray. One of the people we're hoping to have on board very soon. So, all right. So now let's open Nuke and see what's going on. I've got a Nuke session here. I'm going to open it up. Maybe Simon, you can explain a little bit about what's going on when I open this.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for that. So what Athera has done is actually orchestrated the resources from Google Cloud that is required to run this particular app. And during that launch process, we've been able to configure that dynamic storage environment, that dynamic execution environment, to allow this, as described by the context of which Matt spoke earlier. We rely on the fact that we're running on the same systems that power those amazing brands like YouTube and Google Search, and that gives us the speed, it gives us that dependability, and of course one of the things that we found really outstanding about Google is the speed of that global network, the backbone that allows us to talk to the data centers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to our friends at Escape Studios for letting us use this footage. It's pretty cool. So there you have it. In a short amount of time, we've organized a project, added collaborators. We've got some software. We did this on a laptop in a matter of minutes. It's pretty neat. And we're using the software through a web browser, so that's really awesome. However, a lot of people are going to want a more kind of a professional grade experience, kind of a step up from working inside a web browser. So we actually make that available through this cool thing we have called Orbit. So Simon, why don't you talk a bit about Orbit while I fire it up?
I'd love to, Matt. Thanks.
Cool.
Okay, so yeah, Orbit is basically what we call the Athera desktop agent. So its primary purpose is to give you a better connection, a better stream to that remote session. But it also actually includes things like a lightweight file transfer API that you can use to programmatically synchronize data with your Athera storage and your local machines. By connecting, as Matt's about to do here, by connecting with Orbit, he's able to have a faster experience, have better color reproduction. It's got full Wacom support, multi-monitor support too. So all in all, it's the right choice if you want to spend a long time working in this way. In future, we do also plan to support Teradici, so we'll have an even more performant solution to offer then as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so there you go. I'm working in this awesome remote desktop session. You can see the quality's improved a little bit. Looks nice. Multiple monitors, all that great stuff. And so I think I'm ready to render some frames. So I think I'm going to just get my render farm going.
But I don't think I remember you setting up any sort of render farm, Matt.
That's right, I didn't. Right, that's because in Athera, you have a completely dynamic render farm at your fingertips. And in Athera, things work a little bit differently with rendering. So every node that you have in your render farm is basically a clone of your artist session. Right. And what that means is it's using your context and everything that goes with it. So your whole pipeline, your quotas, everything, your permissions are all applied to each and every single render node. Furthermore, I don't have to move any files around. I don't have to send stuff to the cloud or pull stuff down from the cloud. I just say, give me, 10 nodes, and then I'll have 10 frames starting to get generated right there in my storage in my virtual studio in real time. So I'm going to set that up, and maybe Simon, if you could say a little bit about why this stuff is really secure. I mean, I'm sure some people are thinking, wow, all these machines in the cloud, and how do we actually make that all kind of secure and safe for everyone?
Sure. Well, I mean, as you gathered, Athera is a web service, right? And it's a multi-tenant web service. So there's different users from all over, different places, different companies, all using the same system. So how is that secure? Well, we use, essentially we use a software-defined networking policies that allow Matt and anyone working in his group, his organization, to have their own private network. It's a virtually air-gapped studio, if you like. In fact, it can even have the access to the external internet locked down as well, with the option of whitelisting certain addresses. So in this way, we're able to segment the experience. Each org has a private network.
Yeah, so some of my render nodes are coming up here. We're going to see those jobs firing up in a second. Look at that. Here's wow, I've got a whole bunch of nodes coming online, and once they kind of get cranking, I'll actually be able to go through, and when they finish, look at all the log files and find out what each and every one is doing. So that's kind of neat. So I think we've done it. We've delivered Project Cats. It's pretty awesome. Cool. Good job. Thanks. Yeah, nice. So I'm a bit of a bean counter, though. So I'm actually really curious about what we've used, and what was the mix of software going on in my organization. So I've actually got this awesome reports tab I can go to, where I can check out who's doing what. I can even look at kind of log files from my sessions and get a whole bunch of information. These analytics are really powerful and awesome for helping you really understand your studio and even run it more efficiently and just improve over time. So Simon, why don't you say a little bit about the possibilities that we have with this kind of data?
Right. I mean, there's obviously that immediate kind of business insight that we have available right now. Matt can see who's doing what and when. That's really useful when you're talking about working with remote collaborators. But there's a massive opportunity here because obviously, we're centralizing the data, we're centralizing the work, using the cloud as this hub. And we recognize there's a massive opportunity to give value back to the users. So we have plans to use things like Google Cloud's incredible Vision API, that could provide automated tagging, metadata generation, classification of your footage. Or the thing that perhaps is most exciting of all is the machine learning opportunities that are there. So there's a myriad of applications, but perhaps the most obvious one would be predictive cost modeling. So if you provide a script, we could say, there's a 90% chance it's going to cost $100 to render this script, and we can just do that by just looking at the script.
That's cool stuff. And what's really I find exciting, and the whole team does as well, is these are those cool things you can do with machine learning and AI, and image recognition is really only possible at the hyperscale of the cloud. And just being plugged into it is the hard part, and we've hopefully solved that and made it available to everyone. So it's really cool. So if you want to know more, obviously our website is up, and there's a lot of exciting stuff there. This is Athera.io is just a great place to go and just check out the features. You can look at the pricing. We've got great resources, frequently asked questions. We've even got a support portal, documentation. You can peruse the documentation, which is really greatly written. And one of the most exciting things is that you can request a free 30-day trial. So we have a lot of interest generated for Athera, so we're going to try to grant trials as quickly as we can. But I strongly encourage everyone to go check it out on the website, and it's a great place to take a next step. So,
thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. You're actually a really good compositor and a good lead engineer. So, so with that, I actually think the best way of really understanding Athera for me is just listening to customers and people who use it, which is what I do every day, and I'm extremely grateful to have Pat Tunstall here to talk a little bit about his experience using Athera in beta and working with us the last few days as well. So Patton, why don't you take it away?
Go ahead and move over here.
Cool.
Okay, so hello, I am Patton. I work at a company called Attack Plan. I'm a CG supervisor. You might know of RealFX. It's basically RealFX's commercial division. And when these guys asked me to talk about Athera for them, I was like, yeah, sure, because last year I actually used Athera on several projects, like testing it out. And including this Nintendo piece. I'll go ahead and just let it play.
Adventure anywhere. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is coming to Nintendo Switch. Game rated M for mature.
Right. So all the pyro stuff in this piece was done in the cloud. The smoke, the fire, the explosions, all of it was done in Athera. So I just uploaded the files, simulated it, brought it back down. It was super seamless. Used Dropbox to get it all back, and it was awesome. It worked really well. So on top of that, I wanted to basically come up with some simple scenes to kind of like push the system to see what it would do if I drove up the voxel count or the flip particle count. So I created some really simple scenes with some really high density collision meshes, and the point of this was to basically simulate it locally on my workstation box, my freelance workstation box in my house, and also in the cloud, and compare render times. Can I push it further in the cloud because they have significantly more memory? And it was going really well. And then while I was rendering some of these pieces to get them ready for this computer died on me. And this computer is, I've spent hundreds of hours building this thing. Failing at a million things, figuring out how to make the GPUs all work together. There's 10 graphics cards in here. It's a huge mess, but for a year it worked really well. It worked phenomenally. And then it didn't. And it's not going to fix itself. I had to stop what I was doing, and now I'm not doing VFX, I'm doing IT, and I don't know what's wrong with it. So I take the whole thing apart. It takes me 6 hours, put the whole thing back together, and it starts working. I don't know what piece was broken in it. When is it going to break again? I don't know. It's like a hot potato. So it dawned on me. I was like, if I use Athera, I don't have this problem, because that's Google's problem, you know? And they're really good at what they do, and I'm not really good at this thing. So that's really exciting, and it's ironic that kind of happened that way. So I think of this whole thing as this. I call this the digital cinema camera of the VFX world. Kind of what the Red camera and the RE digital camera kind of did to film. This is what for VFX. That's what this is, honestly. Because as a freelancer, I can have what ILM has. I can have what Digital Domain has. I can have 100 gigs of RAM, 200 gigs of RAM. I can have 64 threads. I can really push the boundaries of effects, and I don't have to worry about, oh, I need to simplify things, make things easier. No, I can just do art. That's the whole point of this, right? We want to just make the best art we can. So you don't have to worry about things that really you're not, good at. So here's the tests. This is simple. I used, some high dense ground. I pulled this candle I modeled in Mudbox but this whole scene, other than the candle, was put together in the cloud. I did a file new in Athera, built all this stuff, simulated the Pyro sim, downloaded the VDBs, and then I rendered it at home on that messy computer. So this is the medium scale render. I'll show you a better render of the smoke that went up to 1200 on the biggest voxel grid. But as you can see, it's the sim time is about half in the cloud for the medium size. This one is flip based. I wanted to do viscous flip particles because they're more computationally intense. And the point of this was I wanted to bring in just a texture map, displace the ground by a 4K texture map, and just run a simulation on it and see how well it kind of went into the different grooves. And I pushed the particle count. This was about 9.3 million points, and it took an hour and 45 minutes to simulate. And it was, and then that's also including the meshing. So it's particles and the meshing. And this is another one. So this was the other scene that I wanted to do, and I really pushed it on this one. These are variable viscosity, so they start out really hot and they cool down, which is, anybody who does effects knows that it takes a long time. I couldn't even simulate this on my home box. It failed at 4 hours and only did 35 frames. So the fact that I don't have to worry about reducing my particle count or simplifying things means that I can just make really cool stuff, and that's the whole point. So that's about it for my slides. I'll go ahead and show you the high-res Pyro. There we go. This one I'm pretty excited about because the density of the smoke it looks so cool, and you can really see all the different vorticities and all the different densities throughout the whole thing. I just rendered this without the environmental geometry, just so you can see how it collides and interacts, and you can just push it to the limit, and you can really make some really cool stuff. This took about 4 hours to simulate, which is that's nothing, that's great. So yeah, that's about it. Yes. Yeah, Pat, that was amazing.
Yeah. Really cool stuff, and just seeing the amazing stuff you do with your talent, and the fact that you were able to help you is just inspiring for me personally. So, cool. I'd also, we have another wonderful Athera user with us, Hugo Guerra, who really works as kind of like a small collective of freelancers, and it's been just really inspiring for how he's sort of shown a lot of folks that you can freelance, you can work from home. It is a real thing. So to talk more about that and how Athera has kind of impacted his thinking and his work, I'll hand it over to Mr. Guerra.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I was asked from the Foundry to kind of talk about my story with Athera, and I think for me to talk about the story, I have to go a bit back. So you guys are going to have to be patient with me, because this entire thing started when I started wanting to work remotely. So this is kind of my journey reaching to Athera, which is for me called "You Just Have to Be Better at Working in the Clouds." So very early on, I wanted to be a pianist. That didn't really work out, so I became a visual effects artist. That was my second thing. And these are the kind of things we do usually when we do visual effects. We just make it more muddy, really. That's what we really do. This all kind of started really back in the day when I was like 6, and my father asked me, do you want a bicycle or you want a Spectrum? And you kind of feel like what the answer will be. I kind of got the Spectrum, and I endured through the 30 minutes of loading RoboCop, for example, for me to actually play it. Sometimes it didn't even work, you know. I love that sound. So, of course, a few decades later, a lot of decades later, unfortunately, I'm getting a bit old, but I've worked on many different places. I've worked at the BBC, at Nexus, I've worked at the Mill for quite a while, Fire That Smoke, and now my own company, Hugo's Desk, which also includes a YouTube channel. And I have worked for a lot of clients, and lately, I've been working a lot on the games industry mostly, and I want to talk a bit about my workflow, because all these trailers that you see here for these games, for these AAA games, were kind of done with a remote workflow, which I'm going to talk a bit more in detail on the next few slides. But you guys can of course check my work on hugo-guerra.com to see some of the work that I've been doing. But let's just go back a moment to see how I kind of reached to Athera. The whole reason for me for this to be completely revolutionizing is that when I was at the Mill, I really loved working at the Mill. I enjoyed the people there, but I hated this. I was like, Jesus, I have to go through this every single morning, get squashed in the tube, get squashed in the train, and I hated it, every minute of it. By the time I got to the Mill, I was already tired. I didn't want to work, and then by the time I was there, it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was already exhausted for the rest of the day. So, and then not to mention that by being at the Mill, I had clients. And that meant that I had clients like this, and they were just like basically moving the stuff frame by frame, going back and going forward. And we all have clients, I understand that, but I just don't want them to be next to me. I want them to be on Skype so that I can mute and scream while I'm talking. So, and I felt like that. I ended up, you know, at the end of my tenure at the Mill, not because of the Mill's fault, but because of the way we work right now, I felt like that woman there. So I wanted to kind of like talk a little bit about how I kind of converted for the last 3 years my life to pretty much a digital life. Because to be honest, visual effects doesn't really need to be a factory. It doesn't. And I know it's ironic that I worked at the Mill and this is a factory photo, I know. But it's not like that. I mean, I don't think it has to be. We don't work on the 19th century anymore. And all of that kind of came to fruition to a short film that I was supervising. This was the first project I did completely remote with help of the Mill as well, but help with many artists around the world as well. And this was a great project starring Martin Starr. Basically, you can check it out on YouTube. It's about a guy that walks in slow motion and everyone else is in normal motion. You should check it out. I went to LA to shoot it, and I was there for quite a few weeks. And that's when I kind of started thinking, can I actually work remotely, and can I actually work on the fly? I started really small, you know, I got like a MacBook Air, which is actually this MacBook Air that I have right now on my desk. And this is actually a photo taken on IBC 2015, where I was actually working on some shots on a bar to deliver to the client, using just a really bad Firewire 800 hard drive. You know, that kind of grown. And so for me, it kind of begins, you know, it kind of begins my journey to trying to work remotely and trying to reach, you know, nirvana of working visual effects. Of course, back in the day, there was a time where people thought that was going to be trendy, like people would buy these awesome, gigantic computers and walk around. I kind of felt that back then in 2014, this was the best option I would have at the time. Athera didn't exist. Maybe it did, on your mind maybe, but not really for real. So I still had to buy computers. I bought a Mac Pro, I bought some RAID systems, and I started working on the move. You know, not with a boat, but kind of on the move. And back then, I used FTP like most people do, you know, and I would get these kind of transitions. Oh shit, it's going to be 39 years to download this file, and it's only 180 gigs. Look at that. So FTP is like, you know, something that we should all forget, but maybe to a museum, maybe, or something like that. So at the same time, not only I wanted to work remotely, but I also travel a lot. I keep going to these festivals and talk, and I do keynotes, and I teach in a lot of schools, and I like to travel. I've always liked to travel. So I took my machine with me with a Pelican case, and I always would get these faces with the women, the people on the security in the airport. They would always look at the macro. What is this, sir? You need to open it up so we can swap it for drugs. It's like, and so I started this kind of trend of working with my clients on their places, which was quite cool actually. So I would go to my client to present my daily, or they really liked that because I would show up with all of this, and they would get really quite impressed. This was years ago, of course. Or I would work on an hotel, and every time I go to the hotel, the first question I would ask for the person that was in front of the desk was, "What's the room with the biggest TV? Can I have that one?" So that I could up the TV and actually work remotely. And I ended up working anywhere really where I was. This is me before a talk for the Foundry in Germany years ago. Me still working on a cinematic while I was waiting for everything to get ready. Me working on another hotel, flying again. And of course, that was funny in the beginning, but carrying all that equipment around kind of felt a bit heavy. So then I tried all these things. You know, I tried Google Drive, Dropbox, Box, all sorts of things, but they all had a problem for me. Security was an issue, of course. Performance was an issue. They throttled you. They don't let you download and upload everything you want. The most out of it, you know, is between Google Drive and Dropbox are kind of the best ones that you can find, but it's still a problem. It's still not really fixable. But at least I started having the moment where I could actually go to my phone and check the dailies there, and I could actually look at files while I was on the move, which was really impressive back then, of course. And one thing that was really monumental for this was Skype, of course, because then I started operating with artists. At some point, about a year and a half ago, I was doing a massive game cinematic that was 2 minutes long, and we had 20 people working. None of us ever met. We never met each other. Actually, one of my composers on the room here, he's from Iceland, and we probably meet once a year only. Of course, we talk in Skype every day, and Skype became a part of the communication method for us to all to work and all to talk. And you know, again, traveling again and moving it around my machine, and even at some point, I even went to the Eurostar and went to Paris to work at Ubisoft and took my machine with me as well. One little note here. I also took my PlayStation 4 with me. I found the perfect use for a Wacom Syntec tablet to play PlayStation on the train. It's great. It's a great monitor for that. Fortunately, it was a game called No Man's Sky, which is not very good. You don't need to really play it. So I got my creme brulee and my Red Bulls, went into Ubisoft and kind of like started taking my bags with me and my computers with me and set up shop there. Everyone would like, oh, who's this guy? Like with all these boxes and preview monitors and cases, and kind of felt like a DJ at some point, but without the rock star status, you know, like just the bad status of it. So, you know, but it was all kind of coming together. I was enjoying myself. I was traveling. I was working on cool projects. I had people all over the world working with me, which was really, it felt fresh. But of course, you know, then I was really ready to, okay, so then maybe I can also start working from home. Now, you need to understand that this is not working from home. It's not this. And also, this is not working from home either, as much as he's not even home. He's on a table in the middle of the beach. But for me, working from home was basically ramp up. You know, I live in London. London is terrible on the internet, so I had to buy not one, but 2 business fiber connections and hook them up to my workstation so that I could keep talking with all my clients and keep talking with all my artists. And eventually, you know, whenever people ask me about an home office, these are usually the things that people think what they are, you know, like basically most people think that's my office. This is definitely not my office. Clients think it's this, but actually, this is my office on my home right now. And it's, as much as it looks impressive and as much as I have a lot of screens, because, you know, I have my vector scopes here to do grading, and I have my 10-bit monitors to do color correction, my rate systems, my 3 balls of grading, you know, my Dreamcast on the corner there. You know, it's just ridiculous. Why do I have to have all of this crap on my table to work? I wish I could just have a laptop. I didn't need to have all this stuff. And just like you said, it can break down all the time. It does break down all the time. So going back to that, I kind of feel like, okay, let's now talk about the future. And for me, the future really lies in something, you know, something that I thought back then it was called Athera. I was really excited the Foundry was doing something like that. I keep forgetting that it's now called Athera. I'm so used to the name now. But, and you know, this is the first ever time that I loaded Athera. So this is on my MacBook Air here, and I loaded it up and I was like, wow, oh my God, it's running Nuke on a browser. What the hell is happening? And of course, the first thing that happened was I tried to see if the 3D system was fluid. That was the first thing I saw. And of course, I found out that the shortcuts are not Mac shortcuts. So I tried and tried and tried to move it until I finally understood that it's a PC running. So that I wake up at some point and realize this. Oh, there you go. Now we can move the 3D system. So I was like really impressed by that. And then the next stage was, how far can this go? This is a clip from a short film that I filmed last year. It was shot on 4K. So I brought in a cinema DNG file from Blackmagic camera from an Urza into Athera in 4K and played it back in real time just to see how much flexibility we'd have. And keep in mind, this is old. This is an old version of Athera. Athera is much faster right now, and the performance is muchly improved since this first days of me trying it out and playing it back and testing it with color correction and really seeing the capability. Remember, this is running on a browser on my MacBook Air. This MacBook Air is from 2012. It's really old, so it's not even supposed to run things like this. And, you know, but then I felt, okay, now I'm going to bring the big guns here, and I'm going to really test this thing fully. So I brought a full shot. I went in, and of course, they freaked out a bit because I brought a couple of 100 gigs into the system just to see how much we could bring in, like EXRs and matte paintings and files and 3D systems and cache and everything. It took a bit of time to bring it, not because of Athera, but because Dropbox is a bit slow. And this was the result. I was starting to experiment with some of the shots from Walking Dead, the cinematic that I was working at the time, and playing it back and testing full shots, you know. Oh, sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. So in here, you can kind of see that I'm running full HD, 30 frames per second, playing back. I then also open very complex shots with projection systems, which will come in a second as soon as you wait for that playback to go. Oh, well. Should have trimmed this slide, I guess. So this is a full shot from production that I opened up again. Same deal. This is still running on my laptop, and it's still running on a browser. And keep in mind that these days, Athera is much faster than this in terms of interactivity. This was the beginning of times. But I was just so impressed that this is actually running on a browser. And not to mention that one of the biggest advantages that I felt was that I could start a render, and then I could just open another Nuke box and work on another shot. I mean, in fact, if I'm rich and if I want to pay a lot, I can open 20 Nuke boxes and work on 20 shots at the same time. I just don't recommend you doing that. And you can even have Facebook in the middle of the tabs. You can just like tab from one to the other. And here am I like rendering a shot in the background, which is not really in the background. It's rendering on one Google machine here. And then I can just swap to another tab on the browser, and I have another machine here rendering another shot that I'm doing with 4K plates. This is not even possible with a really fast workstation because you ran out of RAM, you ran out of CPU power. So this was really impressive. So I really thought, how far can I take this? So I went to eBay and I bought a really old piece of junk. I bought this laptop for $49.99, which arrived in my house, and it runs Athera. Look at that, it runs Athera. And I can actually run it with $49.99 and actually run. And actually I even discovered it actually runs on the iPhone as well. Not that you can use it, you know, but you can try. You can kind of swap around and see if it works. My next step is buying that and trying to see if it runs on that thing. I've actually bought it last night. I was a bit drunk. I bought it on eBay. It's coming next week, and I will show you if it works. I hope it works. I have tried it on a PowerPC, and it works. I did manage to get it to work. So now this is actually the new Athera, which I recorded upstairs just about 30 minutes ago. No, actually, no, an hour ago, because I was presenting before. This, as you can see, this is also a production shot from a trailer that I've directed called Dawn of the Titans. And this is playing back through not a really fancy internet, but is actually playing back from the FMX Wi-Fi. This is actually recorded upstairs on the speakers lounge. As you can see, I have proof of that. You even see Mike Seymour is there. You can see that he's there. This is proof. And it was shot just like an hour ago running Nuke. And just keep that in mind. I'm running a compositing application on a really lousy MacBook Air. This has such a potential. That's the thing that I want to really transmit here. Of course, it will still take time for this all to work, and we still need more applications, but this is such a huge potential. And that actually comes to my recapping. For me, I know I've been talking too long. I'm Portuguese. I talk too much. I'm sorry, but I can't help it. But to my recap, for me, Athera just makes my life easier, and I don't have to have an IT department, so that things like this don't happen, you know? I just don't want that to happen anymore. Actually, for me, it's so funny to see, how Arthur C. Clarke actually predicted all of these things, from the internet to in an actual interview. I actually have the interview here for you to listen to, and listen to him actually explaining what I think Athera is now.
The big difference when he grows up, in fact, if we wanted to wait for the year 2001, is that he will have in his own house, not a computer as big as this, but at least a console through which he can talk to his friendly local computer and get all the information he needs for his everyday life, like his bank statements, his theater reservations, all the information you need in the course of living in a complex modern society. This will be in a compact form in his own house. He'll have a television screen like these here, and a keyboard, and he'll talk to the computer, get information from it, and he'll take it as much for granted as we take the telephone.
I wonder though, what sort of a life would it be like in social terms? I mean, if our
well, let's not talk about that. I think ultimately for me, it's really about this sentence. The smallest company in the world can look as large as the largest company in the world on the web, because that's really how it works. It doesn't really matter how big the company is or how many offices it has. What matters is the work that they produce. And for me, working on the cloud like this just makes me produce better work. That's pretty much it, really. So check out my YouTube channel for a full review of Velada and Athera. I'm going to review it, and I'm going to be up with it in a few weeks. And thank you so much for watching.
That's just amazing. I mean, I'm personally touched by the really awesome stuff you guys have talked about, and I'm really excited too for the future that we have for Athera. We have a lot more work to do, but we have it available today, and come to the website, check it out, give it a try. We're really excited to have people put it to work, help them do creative things without all the hassle of computer meltdowns and carrying things around in big bags through security. So check out athera.io, and thank you so much everyone for being here. And I hope you'll have a great rest of the night. There's going to be some drinks from Google, I believe, coming up, and I hope you all enjoy. Thanks.